Hello, Sitheads. We have to begin today's episode of the Mr. Sitter podcast with me, Anthony Lacascio, by honouring a fallen comrade of ours. Now, for the people that are listeners only, for the audio connoisseurs exclusively, you need to know that, first of all, you're missing out on a great deal by not watching the videos and subscribing to the YouTube channel for not anything else but the lovely cast of characters that I have around me while recording every week. One of which we have had to wish a very sad goodbye to this week. You see, while I was watching the Juventus game earlier this week against Roma, which was unfortunately lost by the Bianconeri, something that I have become a little bit desensitized to, I heard a little bit of a crash coming from the bedroom. Now, I just chalked it down to our new kitten, Pandan, causing some kind of ruckus, and I was correct in my assertion, but I didn't realize that what she had done was knocked my Alessandro Del Piero bobblehead off the tall boy where it was residing. The Alessandro Del Piero bobblehead toy, which was brought for me by my sister, who did an exchange in Venice. So it was quite symbolic that, as Juve were losing to Roma, Alessandro Del Piero, probably the greatest Juventus legend of all time, fell from a great height, and he's destroyed. Look. Just it's terrible. And so then after the match, I found myself having to pick up little broken shards of Alessandro Del Piero from the floor. Again, extremely poetic and symbolic for what it represents to be a Juventus fan at the moment. So I hope you all send out your thoughts and prayers for my Del Piero bobblehead and for Juventus, the football club, as a whole. And now it'll just be this masking the very obvious lighting installation that I have behind me that gives me all of the definition against the white wall. So I ask for your support in this very difficult time for me and my family. But what a weekend it was in the football, so let's crack straight into it. I did kind of want to leapfrog from the Del Piero bobblehead somber chat into Juventus losing to Roma, but unfortunately that couldn't happen because it was a weekend in which Liverpool defeated Manchester United 7 motherfucking nil. Holy shit, man. This is United's biggest ever loss in the Premier League. That is since the Premier League started in the early 90s, but that's still a pretty wild stat. Another stat that I saw was that Mo Salah has got more yellows for taking his shirt off celebrating against Man United at Anfield than United have goals at Anfield since 2017. That's 2-1 for anybody interested. That is wild, man. I was not expecting this. I think I predicted a draw, or maybe I didn't think Liverpool were going to win, let alone to absolutely paste them, to bludgeon them, to disintegrate any chance that Manchester United had, certainly of winning the Premier League. Like they were never in the title race, but I don't think they themselves even conceived of it. But yeah, they are they in jeopardy? I don't think they're in jeopardy of not making the top 4. I think United will bounce back quite. Erik ten Hag is the real deal, man. He's a good manager. His team will bounce back from this, even though, he came out when asked about the kind of intimidation factor of playing at Anfield. He came out and said, well, it's a place like any other, and we'll play football like we would play on any other pitch. Would you call that arrogance? No, I would call that just being factual, but yeah, kind of came back to bite him in the ass. The tweet from Marcus Rashford a few years ago where he was holding up a 5, I think they'd scored 5 against somebody, and he was like, "Who wants 7?" Well, that was brought back by the horrible football fandom online trolls, and I mean, like, you just got to cop it at that point. You've got a lot of Man United supporting friends who are in full acknowledgement that they just need to cop this one. This is bad, but it happened, and in the grand scheme of things, losing 7-0, it's you lose 7-0, you lose 1-0 like Juve did to Roma. It's still 3 points missed. So you lick your wounds, you move on. Graham Souness versus Gary Neville is always just so funny, just how they like their individual biases always kind of clash, and neither of them is able to give any kind of objective opinion. And why would they, given their club history? But I did find it funny that the rhetoric is that United actually played quite well in the first half, and it's not a performance that Jurgen Klopp will take away a great deal of optimism about his side with. I think that that's the truth. I think that because basically all the goals came on a massive counter-attack, which is fine. You got to be clinical. Cody Gakpo looked really, really good. Darwin Núñez looked pretty good too. Salah, a week after I said he was fucking washed, looked pretty good as well. But we'll see, man. Liverpool are going to go hell for leather to get into the top four. I think they're still done and dusted against Real Madrid, but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out moving forward. Arsenal continue their title charge, winning dramatically in the last minute versus Bournemouth in a blockbuster match. This is the sign of champions, guys. They are consistent. They roll out the results. They are still 5 points clear. And yeah, I'm still hoping that they go ahead and do it, even though this weekend they have a banana skin. It's definitely a banana skin against a Fulham side that was unlucky to lose to Brentford the other day and who are pretty good. I dare say that if Arsenal can get past Fulham convincingly, they will carry with them enough, enough momentum to finish it off. Even though Phil Foden scored an absolutely ridiculous Messi-like goal against Newcastle, Man City keep winning. Chelsea finally win against a hapless Leeds United that I'm kind of sort of thinking are going to get relegated, even though I don't like Leeds getting relegated. Leeds they're a Premier League history team, and I don't want to see them get relegated, but I want to see Weston McKennie. I always called him Wesley McKennie. That's how long he's been away from Juve. I forgot the cunt's name. I want to see him because he came in and said to his agent, I absolutely cannot stay at Juve after everything that's happened after the World Cup, and they got him out. And mate, I didn't even fucking know your name, bro, before you came to Juve. So enjoy the championship, brother. As we mentioned before, Brentford defeating Fulham, and Manor Solomon scored for the 5th game in a row. This is a game that it's like I've been billing the that little bracket that are going head to head with the Liverpools and, I mean, until the fat lady sings, I guess, the Chelseas and the Spurses to kind of make it into possibly the top four. And definitely for European contention in that little battle of the battlers where we have Brentford, we have Fulham, we have Brighton, and I guess Newcastle fit into there. But I can honestly see those three teams all finishing above Newcastle. It's been a bad second half of the season for the Toon, but they got cashola, so they'll be fine. Brentford did kind of separate themselves from the pack by beating Fulham quite. Like, it was 3-2, but the second Fulham goal came quite late. It was fine for Brentford, and they still haven't lost in the Premier League since like October. That's fucking nuts, man. Brentford are the real deal. Thomas Frank is a really interesting and good manager, and I wonder if, the Brentford story is just going to keep going and going. I think they're probably not going to make the Champions League, but I dare say they're going to make the Europa League. He's going to stick around for at least one more season, but Thomas Frank is a manager that a lot of the bigger teams really should be looking at. Brighton, on the other hand, are the third one in that pack. They're my boys Brighton and Hove Albion, with my boy Roberto De Zerbi absolutely walloping West Ham 4-0 to stake their claim. Moises Caicedo, who kind of already packed his bags to leave Brighton, is now saying, yeah, we're gonna push for the Champions League. We think we can do it. And I would absolutely love it if Roberto De Zerbi came in and took Brighton and my boy Kaoru Mitoma to the promised land of the Champions League in not even his first full season in charge of the Seagulls. So that's cool. And like a little bit towards the end, this is kind of English/German news. We say, especially while Jude Bellingham is still playing for Borussia Dortmund, who are out of the Champions League, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Birmingham are naming a bridge, the Bellingham Bridge. This is after Birmingham, the club, Bellingham's former club, retired his number 22 after he left the club when he was like 17. So the mass citywide fellatio of this guy is continuing, but you know, Jude Bellingham is probably going to turn into the greatest player that Birmingham have ever produced. I mean that the club and the town, and fucking why not, man? Why not? Let's move to Italy, wherein Lazio, away from home, managed to defeat Napoli, who lose for the second time all season, having lost to Inter. They are not unbeatable, the Neapolitan boys, but they are still so far ahead of everyone else that they could probably lose another 3 or 4 games in a row, and it wouldn't matter. You'd think, like, is this going to be the stage of the grandest scale collapse in history of the title charge? And the answer is no. It's not going to happen, guys. Napoli are playing Atalanta this weekend, and they're playing Milan the following weekend, and like they're two wins there, and you can give them the title. You know what I mean? Even 2 draws, you can give them the title. Inter are not consistent enough to catch them. Juve, unless we get the 15 points back, are not going to catch them, and couldn't even fucking beat Roma. So whatever. So yeah, don't think it's going to happen. And the Napoli project is one that, like, I don't like them, you know, because they don't like us, but us being the Juve fans. But you have to have respect for the project. They are, as far as I know, the only top team not in any kind of depth, in any kind of debt. That is, they have plenty of depth, and they managed to turn a transfer market profit while somehow becoming an overall better squad in this last summer transfer window. And I dare say they're probably going to do it again. Victor Osimhen came out recently and said that he's working hard to secure his dream of playing in the Premier League. Now, he's been misquoted as saying that he wants to play in the Premier League next season. He says that it is his dream to play in the Premier League. Either way, at the end of this campaign, you can bet that a lot of the Premier League clubs, particularly those that are in need of number 9s, they're going to come hollering for the Nigerian nightmare, particularly Manchester United and Chelsea, because I don't think Chelsea are going to be welcoming Lukaku back anytime soon. Man United definitely need a big-ass number 9. It's going to be between this dude and Vlahovic. We'll talk about Vlahovic in a little bit. But yeah, I think Osimhen will probably leave, and it'll be for 100+ million euros, which means Napoli will be able to buff out. They'll be able to replace him very easily, and they'll be able to buff out their squad even more and just keep this thing rolling. So big kudos to Napoli. You have to respect what they're doing. My club, on the other hand, Juve, lose to Roma. I said that they wouldn't. They did. They played actually really, really well against Roma. It was a shame that we did lose. Allegri came out before and said that if they can somehow manage to make the Champions League with this 15-point deficit, it would be like winning 3 Scudetti, which I think is a kind of a self-congratulatory in advance / excuse, just to like kind of hedge your bets for the rest of the season. I can happily say that it's not going to fucking happen, man. Especially not after losing. They're like 14 points off being in the top 4, even if the 15-point margin doesn't get given back. I think something like that. And so, like, forget about it. They played well. They played much better than I've seen them play. But the system, this kind of pragmatic, make the best of the sum of your parts, 3-5-1-1 is what it kind of is. It just leaves Dusan Vlahovic, who looked like a fucking... It looked like one of the... You can't get excited about... I don't know how many of you listen to the Kevin Lasagna podcast, but I had a dream that Vlahovic came to Juve, and then 2 weeks later he did. And I was jizzing myself. I was such a big fan of him. He looked like an absolute phenom at Fiorentina. But so did Matthijs de Ligt at Ajax. And so did Dejan Kulusevski at Parma. And, the list can go on and on of the players that come to play under Allegri and just ferment. They just don't live up to their potential. And if Vlahovic leaves at the end of the season, this will just be another grand scale failure to bring in what could represent a stalwart of the future, a young player with limitless potential that comes into Juve. He specifically requests to come to Juve over other clubs. He rejects Arsenal, rejects Atletico Madrid to come to Juve, and Juve just destroy the player to the point where they need to move on to a different club in order to just get their career back on track. There's so many players like it, and I just don't know what could... Like, Juve, even if the 15 points come back, Ceferin, the president of UEFA, is pretty keen to just kick Juve out of all European competition next season. So without the European competition revenue, I dare say it would be very difficult for Juve to keep players like Vlahovic, especially if Max Allegri is still there. The guy looks totally disinterested. He's totally isolated up front. It's not a system that suits his skill, and it's not a system in which he can develop. Max Allegri really does struggle to develop younger players. He's very good at turning a 7 out of 10 player into a 9, 10 out of 10 champion. He's done that plenty of times before. But to start from scratch, he's not the guy. So I dare say Juve need to either part ways with Allegri and bring back, or bring in, I mean, you could bring back Conte, but bring in a manager who can rebuild the system and play attacking football. So Conte's out there, and that might encourage these kind of players to stick around. But they didn't deserve to lose to Roma, and that's not me being biased. Roma weren't that good, but they Mourinho'd it. They scored a absolutely freaky goal from Gianluca Mancini, who I never would have... He's a rugby player. I never would have suspected that he could hit a shot like that. Scored an absolute belter. Roma's defense was fantastic. I'm such a big fan of Roger Ibanez, the Brazilian international. He has the speed and the grace and the dribbling ability of not a defender, but he plays quite well on that left side of the defense. Mancini's just a fucking thug, which you need to have in every team. And Smalling is the leader. He's the experienced head. They got a really good defense. And then Mancini made Moise Kean look like a fucking idiot, pulling his dreadlocks 30 seconds after the young Juve striker came on, and Kean lashed out at him and got sent off after 30 seconds. This precipitated some tweets about his future being in doubt and how Juve will probably not redeem his 28 million euro buyout clause from Everton because of this, and he'll be fined by the club, only to be followed hours later by the news from Romeo Agresti that Juve have in fact activated the purchase option and he is now a permanent Juventus player. So don't believe any fucking thing that you hear in the Italian media. Except for this one. This is one that I want to believe. Gravina, the FIGC president, that's the Italian FA, effectively, that's the Football Association of Italy. He has said that they are pushing hard to win the bid for Euro 2032 for Italy to host Euro 2032, which will address one of culture's biggest problems being the infrastructure. If you look at some of the stadiums, the state of some of the grounds that these so-called top teams are performing in, you would be sick to your stomach. Juve went to play against Cremonese in Cremona earlier this year, and the stadium looked like some of the stadiums that I've fucking played at. And I should not be playing at stadiums, guys. So, that would be great. You'd assume that the construction of the stadiums and everything to go around it would begin 4 years earlier after the previous Euro, so as early as 2028, if Italy do manage to win the bid for Euro 2032, which, if they can get their shit together, there's absolutely no reason why they can't. Given the kind of the importance of football to Italian culture, the way that Italian economy and the general kind of industry is raising itself in Italy, like hotels are getting nicer, and people in service industries are starting to understand a little bit more of customer service values, and they're trying as hard as they can to build Italy into, you know, a functional kind of more of a Germany. You'd expect that football will catch up, and this is a great way to do that. So fingers crossed, guys. We'll see if that happens. Real Madrid drew to Real Betis, who will take on Manchester United in the Europa League. Real Betis are a very plucky side. Evidently, Barcelona are now 9 points clear, heading into El Clasico, which is in 2 weeks. But do not take the gloves off just yet, ladies and gentlemen. We know how these things can go. If Real Madrid can turn it around, 6 points, not that bad. I'd be happy if Xavi wins his first ever title with Barcelona as manager, but I'd also be happy if they totally fuck it up. So watch this space. Carlo Ancelotti, for his money, there's been reports that he's accepted the job offer for the Brazil national team at the end of the season, which means his time at Real Madrid is almost certainly over. Not sure who the replacement is. You can hear me say this all the time. Real Madrid should go after Unai Emery, who is at Aston Villa. Yes, Unai Emery should be the next Real Madrid manager. He won't be, unless it appears in one of my dreams. Atletico, meanwhile, storming back up the table, even though it is Diego Simeone's last season in charge. They beat Sevilla 6-1. No bueno for Sevilla this season. And Atletico will solidify their place in the Champions League next season. Another interesting story to watch, because Atletico have got all of these wondrous attacking talents and their defensive coaches on the way out. So we will see who replaces Simeone at the end of the season and what that does to this great Spanish club. Neymar is out for the season with this injury that he sustained last week, which can only mean that his sister's birthday party is raging throughout the rest of the year, and he's got to be there for it. But we wish Neymar well nonetheless. And yet another nail in the PSG coffin. Also for the Champions League, because I don't think that they can overturn Bayern Munich without it. But for his money, Kylian Mbappe has become PSG's all-time leading goal scorer with 201 goals at the age of 24. If ever you needed any more evidence that this guy is not going to be hanging around in Paris too much longer, like there's short of winning them the Champions League, which it's not going to happen. Especially not this season. There's nothing more for him to do in Paris. It's time for him to go to a grander stage. So let's just move on. Speaking of moving on in the Champions League, Chelsea defeated Borussia Dortmund, as I thought they would, handing Borussia Dortmund their first loss since the World Cup of this year. In fact, the first game that's not a victory for Borussia Dortmund. So a bit of an unexpected result by anybody not named Mark Bosnich. I thought that Chelsea would go through. You just expect this kind of firepower to eventually tell, because they do have very, very good players. It's a bit of a dubious retaking of the penalty that Kai Havertz scored. Emre Can was very, very upset about that. But Borussia Dortmund are out of the Champions League, which could actually do wonders for their domestic campaign. They are still first equal with Bayern Munich. Chelsea, meanwhile, will be a team that nobody really wants to draw, but a team that in the next round of the Champions League, people might be happy that they get. Like, if Napoli get Chelsea, you can write the fucking book for Graham Potter for this season. And then, of course, Benfica pummeled Club Brugge, who was coached by Scott Parker for some fucking reason. They pummeled them 5-0 this morning. No, 5-1, and it was an aggregate score of 7-1 overall. Bruges kind of fluked it into the next round, but they were there nonetheless, and this can be seen as nothing but a statement from Benfica, who I've been saying for a long time, they are very, very good. Like, they're not just good for a Portuguese team. They're very, very good, Benfica. Nobody wants to cop Benfica in the next round. And in fact, if Chelsea cop Benfica in the next round, write the fucking book on Graham Potter for the Champions League this season, because they can't beat Benfica. Benfica are a team that absolutely nobody want to cop in the next round. And even having lost Darwin Núñez in the summer and Enzo Fernandez in the winter, they are still going to be very, very tough to crack. Okay, we've got a few comments and questions that I need to answer from previous weeks. And we already kind of did. I've spoken about the big games that are happening this weekend already. I'm not going to do a preview. All I'm going to do is chat about the questions that we've been asked. I'm not doing a sitter for this week because I want you guys to nominate a sitter. So let me know what sitter I should do for next week, and I'll shout your name out if you let me know a cool one that I may have missed. So finally, I'm going to answer my. I believe she's from Norway. Her name is Selmita, and her question was about Tunisian international Amor Layouni, who is on loan at the Western Sydney Wanderers from Norwegian club Vålerenga. She wanted to know about my thoughts regarding this transfer because this guy, as apparently they were desperate, the Norwegian side were desperate to kick him out of the club because he is quote unquote a grifter. This is from the listener. Now, I struggled to find any information about his griftiness online, but I'll take your word for it, Selmita. However, I will say that on his debut for the Western Sydney Wanderers, Layouni did score the equaliser in the 5th minute of extra time to end the game 4-4 against Adelaide United, saving the bacon of the Western Sydney Wanderers. So, perhaps having played in the Norwegian league, he I don't know, maybe he's like stealing a living, not really playing that much. He's a hustler. But clearly there is some talent in this guy's boots, and maybe the A-League is the place for him. Maybe the Norwegian League, well, I'm going to get in fucking trouble for saying this, but maybe the Norwegian League is just that much better than the A-League that this is more of a home for this guy. He's also played previously in the Egyptian League for a club called, wait for it, Pyramids FC. Yeah. If you asked me in year 8 to guess one of the clubs in Egypt, I still don't even think I would be as stupid as to guess Pyramids FC. It's like some drunk English guy trying to banter off against his Egyptian mate. Like, what's he going to play for? Pyramids FC. But it actually exists. Pyramids FC. Someone buy me a jersey for Pyramids FC. And I'll wear it on the podcast. Another question came on YouTube from a listener called Artemis. Artemis would like to know if Aaron Moy could get a move back to the Premier League. Of course, Aaron Moy, soccer international, former Huddersfield Town and Brighton and Hove Albion midfielder, now playing at Celtic, and he's killing it for Celtic. He really is. Doing a really good job, playing some Ange ball. I am going to say, to answer the question, could he get a move back to the Premier League? Absolutely. Absolutely, he could get a move back to the Premier League, especially if Ange ball washes its way onto the English portion of the British Isles, which I hope, I pray, happens sooner rather than later. I can see every situation in which Ange brings Aaron Moy back, but should he move back to the Premier League? No. And if he moves back to the Premier League, will it be a good move for him? Again, no. Moy is physically not up to the challenge of playing in the Premier League. The Scottish Premier League is perfect for him. I can see him coming back to the A-League when his time in Scotland is done. He's talented, but he's definitely not a starter in a Premier League club, and I dare say he probably won't go back. So sorry about that, Artemis. And I just want to shout out this comment on the YouTube by Pepe Carpinelli, who just said, "Keep up the good work." You know what, Pepe? You keep up the good work because you are doing the good work by listening and commenting on the YouTube. Leave comments, guys. This is what you got to do. I want yous to leave comments on all this stuff and suggest a sitter for 2 weeks' time. That's right, 2 weeks' time. I should flag this. There's not going to be an episode next week because I am in Adelaide for my Fringe Festival run. So if you're in Adelaide and you're listening to this, come and see my show, Heart of Darkness. You can get tickets at the Adelaide Fringe website. You can get tickets at my website. You can get tickets on my. You can go through all the links that are on my Instagram. You can figure it out. You're a smart cookie. You can work it out on your own. So come and check that out if you're in Melbourne or Perth or Sydney or Newcastle, the shows are coming up, and I am even looking into booking shows in Wollongong, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and Canberra moving forward throughout the year. So keep an eye out if you're in any of those cities. I am much better at stand-up than I am about talking about football, and I'm pretty good at talking about football. So I'll leave you guys on one note. And one note alone, which I forgot to write in my show notes, but I remember towards the end, and it's something that we should talk about 100%, because if it is real, it is a good thing. An expression of interest was put out by a bunch of Premier League, not English Premier League, but Premier League level in Australia, clubs to be a part of an official second division within the A-League structure. And I think it was like 36 teams or something from all across the country, mostly from New South Wales and Victoria, but a few, like one from Tassie, one from Western Australia, a bunch from South Australia and Queensland, all put their names forward to be in potentially in this second tier. And I dare say there's probably enough for I dare say a lot on this podcast. Sorry, I'm gonna update my vernacular for the podcast. But for the purposes of this little rant, I dare say that there's enough expressions of interest to perhaps create even a third tier within this hierarchy, which would be fucking great for Australian football. Now we're cooking. Without the threat of relegation, the bottom-dwelling clubs in the A-League in any given season have got no incentive to want to improve anything within any given season, because why would they? There are no stakes for them. With stakes included, competition gets higher, infrastructure gets better, facilities get more in-depth, everything improves when it's more serious, guys. When it's more serious. Why did Roman Reigns fail as a babyface? Because no one believed he would lose. Why is Batman more popular than Superman? Because his problems are much more relatable and much bigger to deal with. Therefore, without adversity, there is no progress. Without pressure, there is no diamonds created. Put the pressure on these A-League teams. Make them fear going down. Let's hope that this expression of interest is not just a smokescreen and that they actually implement this. And yeah, there's going to be teething pains for a long time. It's going to be something very hard to implement. But in the long run, this could be the thing that really propels Australian football forward. And then I can stop being a fucking online villain, and we can all believe in Garang Kual's potential and the potential of any big player to come out of the A-League. And the biggest superstar of the A-League cannot be Josh Cavallo, who came out and did something absolutely momentous for the sport, but like it's 2020, you know what I mean? Like the football is so globally behind in a progressive sense that Josh Cavallo is this giant. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Josh Cavallo. He's a hero. He absolutely. But the fact that it's in 2022, 23, he came out a couple of years ago, I think. The fact that that's happening now, and now he's kind of being he's being heralded as this pioneer. We're in the dark ages, people, and we need to get out of them. So, expression of interest for the second division of the A-League is a good thing. Let me know your thoughts on that if you're interested. And send in questions, do reviews, do all that fun shit, because it really helps. It really helps the podcast and the algorithm if you do reviews on iTunes and Spotify, and it helps visibility on YouTube if you leave comments on the YouTube, and it helps me get more fodder and feel like I'm fostering more of a community if you write questions on the YouTube and the Instagram, etc., etc. So, thank you all for being here. Wish me luck in Adelaide next week. I will let you guys know how it went in 2 weeks' time, and we will do this all again. So, on behalf of me, the corpse of my fallen Alessandro Del Piero bobblehead, and all of the daughters around the world, be raised, be cool. Catch you in a couple of weeks.